Folks, today's show is going to be a little bit special. We're going to discuss something. I kind of primed the pump a little bit, but I do want to talk to you about the prospect of scheduling USM. And it's one of those hear me out situations. We'll talk about that, and we will do the FPI projections from ESPN in the second segment, along with Tom Vanderford. This is the Locked On Ole Miss podcast.
You are Locked On Ole Miss, your daily podcast on the Ole Miss Rebels. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, welcome to the Locked On Ole Miss podcast. I'm your host, Stephen Willis. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for being here at all. It's really great. I do want to tell you that today's show is brought to you by Bet Online. Today's episode is brought to you by Bet Online. Bet Online has you covered with the season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before. Bet Online, where the game starts. Also, thank you very much for making the Locked On Ole Miss podcast your first listen every day. We are free and available on all platforms. Today's show is going to be a little bit different. Now, I've done this show for 7 months, and there is an interesting relationship between Ole Miss fans and Southern Miss fans. I get that. I understand that entirely. There's probably also an interesting relationship between Ole Miss fans and Memphis fans. I get that. It's the rivalry that really isn't a rivalry. But listen to Will Hall at Sunbelt Media Days.
Yeah, I would love to get it done. I'm all in. There's probably nothing I can do besides say I want to get it done. I know Jeremy McClain, our AD, would love to get it done, and I know our people would love to get it done. It's great for us because it's a low-budget travel game, obviously. We're going to go to Starkville in 23, and then in 25 they're going to come back to the Rock. So it's great for us. We're going to play a so-called Power 5 team every year. So it would be great if we could just keep it right here and keep all that money in state and do it right here. I'd much rather play Mississippi State and Ole Miss than Alabama and Ohio State and Miami and those guys.
Yeah, that's a big deal. That was Will Hall at Sunbelt Media Days. And if you're wondering where this is coming from and why I'm talking about this today, this is obviously percolating down in Hattiesburg. And I think the Super Regional that we played down there, it sparked interest in this game happening again because Ole Miss and Southern Miss fans were able to peacefully coexist. Now, there were crazy stuffs from the Hattiesburg mayor, and I'm not saying everything is perfect. Now, so understand that. But I think it is time that Ole Miss needs to start considering Southern Miss the same way it does Troy, the same way it does Louisiana Monroe, the same way it does South Alabama. Teams that they have no problem playing in, there's not really a thought to doing it because these are teams that really can't hurt them. And if you lose that game, that's more of an on-you situation than any situation where they're up for it. All teams are up for beating Ole Miss. They really want to win. USA really wants to win. Troy's really going to want to win. Louisiana Monroe really wants to win because Ole Miss is a notch that they can reach that you wouldn't normally be able to get to. So this would be a huge win in their program, just like Southern Miss. It's the same situation, but there is a middle block, a cognitive mental block about Ole Miss fans when it comes to Southern Miss. And I think that's the way because of the way the series ended in 1984. Because if you go back to 1984, that was a completely different college football than we have today. All of the athletic budgets were relatively the same. It didn't matter that Ole Miss and State was in the SEC and Southern Miss was, I guess at that point they were an independent. I don't know. This is before Conference USA. And it just didn't matter. All the budgets were about the same. It was about probably $10 or $15 million a year for all of the athletic sports. So there was a parity between Southern Miss, Ole Miss, and State because all the schools played their big home games in Jackson. all had little stadiums on campus that weren't particularly nice. And to a player in state, it looked like the choice was between three. And Ole Miss fans will tell you today that them stopping playing USM is exactly why it is the way it is today, that isn't true. The SEC and the evolution of college football is the reason it is where it is today. Because if you look at athletic budgets, Ole Miss's athletic budget is somewhere around $110 million a year. I think Southern Miss is somewhere between 20 and 30. Their athletic budget is much closer to Jackson State than it is to even upper-level Sunbelt schools like Coastal. They're an ultimate little brother. They're teetering on the FCS level. But some Ole Miss fans will look at them because they had a rough experience losing a 13-10 game in Jackson in 1984, that they want them to die on the vine. You hear that all the time. Let them die on the vine. They're not going to die. They're not going to go away. And any relevance that they lost is because the SEC gained prominence in the national landscape. And Ole Miss has been along rising tide lifts all ships in that scenario. It's not anything that Ole Miss did. They play Mississippi State. Southern Miss is not rapidly bouncing back after those games. They've done this for fairly close to a decade now. I think it's going to be 5 times over 10 years they've played by the time it's done in 2024. And I just don't understand why that game shouldn't come back for Ole Miss. Now, whenever the schedule happens and we go to a 9-game conference schedule, which is going to happen, the game that's going to go out is one of the G5 games. There's going to be a Power 5 that's going to stay in. There's going to be an FCS that is absolutely going to stay in. One of the 2 G5s is going to go away. My suggestion is once every 10 years or twice every 10 years, play a Southern Miss football game instead of Troy. Instead of Louisiana Monroe, instead of South Alabama, instead of those guys, play USM a couple of times a decade. The same thing for SES games. Play Jackson State. Play Alcorn. I don't know if you can play Valley because I think their coefficient or whatever is too low and it would hurt you rather than help you. But keep that in state and do what you have to do. Do not prop up the Louisiana directional schools. Do not prop up the Alabama directional schools. Do not prop up the Tennessee directional schools. All of these neighboring states are the beneficiaries of a fan base that does not want to play USM. I think Ole Miss every 10 years should play USM twice, Memphis twice, Tulane twice, UAB twice, and probably MTSU twice. Every 10 years. And it would be a situation that would be fun. Those are nice, travelable games that people can go whenever attendance is a problem in college sports these days. It has a chance to be fairly special. That is just my opinion of what's going on. But I do think it is time to start treating USM the same way we would treat Troy, USA, ULM. And whenever we see them on the schedule, USM needs to be the same thing. They're not the boogeyman. They haven't been the boogeyman for 20 years. It's okay to play that game again. It's a game that you will be expected to win 90% of the time. Would you lose one? Yeah, eventually. It's a sport. It's a competition. Don't be so risk adverse that you're afraid of losing. Just my opinion. Anyway, I do want to tell you about betonline.net. Betonline.net is the fastest and easiest way to check in on all your betting needs. Find all of your favorite sports and events at the #1 online source for odds, lines, and games. Find reviews and news of every league, including Major League Baseball, NFL, NBA, NHL, combat sports, esports, and even golf. Maybe even Major League Soccer. BetOnline continues to be the top online resource for all of your sporting wagering information. From live in-game betting, scores, and podcasts, they have you covered. By the way, Derek Vandegrift is going to be doing a gambling show during the fall for us on this channel. So if you like Derek, he's going to be back. We're going to use him during football as well. Head to BetOnline today or use your mobile device to learn more about the action happening today. BetOnline, where the game starts. Also, thanks for making the Locked On Ole Miss podcast your first listen every day. We are free and available on all platforms, including iTunes. Do not forget to rate and review us on iTunes. You can say whatever you want to say. Just please leave a 5-star review. That will help with the algorithm and people trying to find the show outside. It's going to grow our prominence within the Ole Miss podcast community. So I appreciate it. 5-star review. Say whatever you want to. Do not forget to rate and review us on iTunes and Spotify, actually. If you listen on Spotify, we could use a review as well. Anyway, I get off my soapbox a little bit after the USM stuff earlier, and I do want to talk about this. This is a cool graphic from Ole Miss Inc., by the way, that I'm going to use in just a second. But I want to talk to you about ESPN FPI projections and how I think most people get it wrong, okay? Most people get it wrong, and we're going to talk about this for a second, and here it is. It's a very nice graphic by Ole Miss Inc., by the way. They did a really good job. But these are the ESPN's, he says 2022 predictions. It's 2022 probabilities is probably the right way to put it. The way you look at it is, and let's take Troy, okay? Ole Miss has 89.9% chance to win the game. What does that mean? Well, out of 889 times that the game is simulated or played, Ole Miss is going to win 889 times out of 1,000. So there's still 111 in this probability of Troy being able to pull off an upset. Central Arkansas, same thing. 985 times out of 1,000, Ole Miss wins that game. Georgia Tech, 773 times out of 1,000, Ole Miss wins that game. Tulsa, 924 out of 1,000. Ole Miss wins that game. Ole Miss is a projected favorite in all the simulations against Kentucky. 599 out of 1,000 times Ole Miss wins that game. Vanderbilt, 896 times out of 1,000 times they win that game. Auburn, 546. This is probably the point. Anything under 60 I would label as a toss-up. So the toss-ups on the schedule would be Kentucky barely, Auburn, and Arkansas. Because if you look at the Arkansas games, like Ole Miss is not favored by over 50%, but they're saying 497 times out of 1,000, Ole Miss wins that game. And Arkansas is at 503 out of 1,000. There's like only 6 simulations that separate those two. That's a true toss-up. It's a coin flip. So you take that and, you build LSU. LSU's favored by 370 times out of 1,000. Ole Miss is going to win that game. Texas A&M, 390 out of 1,000. Ole Miss is going to win that, Ole Miss will win. Alabama, 175 out of 1,000. I mean, this is the lopsided game that's on the schedule. But the important thing to realize, there's really only one game that through probability is a long shot for Ole Miss. There's 2 that's going to be difficult. There's one that's a coin flip. Coin flip in the negative. There's 2 that's a coin flip in the positive. And after that, it's all over 60%. Ole Miss has better odds of beating Mississippi State than its second largest probability failure at LSU, 37%. So that's a positive. Anybody that looks at this and they're like disagreeing about probability, because they look at it, if it's over 50%, you're predicted to win. If you're under 50%, you're predicted to lose. And that isn't exactly what's happening in this probability game. And if you look at this as a probability thing, the way I just explained it, they're predicting a fairly easy path to 9-3 for Ole Miss if everything goes well. If everything goes really well, 10-2, 11-1 is possible. and that Alabama game is going to be ultimate. That is what ESPN is saying. That is the really cool thing that they're going to have going into the season. So, like I said, this is a great graphic by Ole Miss Inc. If you want to follow him on Twitter or whatever, Ole Miss Inc., do it. Absolutely, this is good stuff. But you can see the graphics. The games that Ole Miss are supposed to win is fairly slam dunk. Now, this is the one thing that I would disagree about this probability, okay? And you will hear this whenever I start going through all the games. And that is that position of the Arkansas game right after that Alabama game. It might be 49.7, but that is probably the only game, including Alabama, that I'm chalking up as an L this season. Ole Miss does not do well in Fayetteville. I do not know why. I think it's a confidence issue, but they're going to be beat up. Everything after the Alabama game is going to be there. If Ole Miss has a big win, there's a chance for a letdown. If Ole Miss loses, they could be deflated a little bit and get ready for the Mississippi State game 5 days later. The Arkansas game is an all-time bad position for Ole Miss. And if you look at the schedule, that's the one that I'm like, I just don't know. So 49.7 to me, personally, my opinion, is probably not the right thing, not in a good place. Just is what it is. It's but the schedule sets up so favorably for Ole Miss up until the bye week, which is set up 11-5. The hardest game on the schedule is at Texas A&M. There's an at LSU on there, and there's a Kentucky on there. There's going to be some hard games. You play in the SEC, you're going to play hard games. But coming back from that bye week, you talk about coming back and let's go to work. You got Alabama, at Arkansas, Mississippi State. 2 home games for sure. That game at Fayetteville, that's the worst kind of sandwich game in my opinion. And because of that, I'm a little bit nervous of what Ole Miss is going to do. Anyway, we have Tom Vanderford coming up after the break. He's going to talk about a little bit of everything. We didn't have him last week, so stick around for that. And absolutely get ready. If you're listening to this on the weekend, I hope it is going absolutely perfect. But let's take a little bit of break and hear from these sponsors. All right, thank you for making the Locked On Ole Miss podcast your first listen every day. We are free and available on all platforms, including YouTube. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. If you would hit the bell for notifications of new videos going up, which happens quite frequently, and of course upvote the video itself. And don't forget to follow us at all of our numerous social medias out there. LO Ole Miss on Instagram, Locked On Ole Miss on TikTok, and at the Stephen Willis, as you can see below, on Twitter, and at Tom Vanderford on Twitter as well. So if you'd give us a follow, we'd appreciate it as well. Tom, we missed you last week because last week we just had a busy, weird week. How you doing, man?
I'm doing good, man. I'm doing good. I'm glad to be back, but you had a lot of people that I admire a lot, so I enjoyed watching those podcasts instead of participating in one. But I'm glad to be back.
Yeah, I interviewed. I guess it might have been this week. Stuart Patridge. And there was a technical difficulty and he got cut off. So the first thing I did was like, hey, Stuart, will you come back on in August and finish this up? Because I wanted to ask you about the 97 LSU game and as well about the quarterback competition. I figured he'd have some insight on that. And he said he would do it. So I'm pretty fired up about that.
That's good. That's good. Yeah, so, he was a special quarterback.
Yeah, he was the quarterback, and I said this on the video. He was the one that kind of brought Ole Miss back to prominence. After 95 and 96, that 97 team, that was the team that, if it wasn't for them getting shafted by the Independence Bowl in 2001, after the taking a 6-5 Arkansas over a 7-4 Ole Miss would have had like a 8 or 9 year bowl run until 2004.
Oh yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's we've had our spurts, and that was a really good stretch. I think as long as we keep Mr. Kiffin at the helm, I think we'll be going bowling every year. Mm. I've seen some of the prognostications have us anywhere from second to fifth, and this team has so much talent, but there's so much unknown. It all depends. It depends on how our quarterback plays. It depends on how I think our tight end is going to help out and our slot receiver is going to help out. I think our slot receiver that we picked up late from UCF is going to be a game changer. I think he's Elijah Moore-like. He's not the only one.
Yeah, we have some guys at that slot position. We don't know who is going to be the bell cow of the bunch, but you have Jalen Knox, who is almost a Dontario Drummond type slot, going to play the position that way. You have the Jalen Robinson, who is built like Elijah Moore. You have J.J. Henry, who is built a lot like Jalen Waddle. I'm not calling him Jalen Waddle. He's built like Jalen Waddle.
Yeah.
And then and you have Rafe Vincent, and I'm not going to make the comparison that everybody wants to make, but he was a kid that was a star before he got hurt last year, and he could come on this year and steal some reps at that slot position, depending on what they want to do. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. We're not going – listen, we're going to be able to go fast. We got plenty of receivers. We got a stock backfield. We're going to be able to go fast. And it all is going to depend on that, in my opinion, it's all going to depend on the command of the quarterback position and how good of a field general they are in decision maker.
Yeah, I go back and forth on it. It was like, do you need Matt Corral at quarterback? And I was like, I don't think you need that with this team. I think you need A.J. McCarron sitting back there. And you have somebody like that, you're going to be fine.
Yeah, A.J. McCarron, Jay Barker, you don't need a superstar. You need a game manager because you've got, in my opinion, probably two of the best running backs in the SEC back there that you can swap out. I love Snoop Conner. I think Snoop Conner's awesome. The same way with Jerrion Ealy. But I don't think we're losing a step at all with the two that replace him. I think Zach Evans has a chance to be the best running back in the SEC.
Yeah, and the big surprise that everybody is going to take from this season is I think Quinshon Judkins is a plus Henry Parrish Jr. And you'll see, he's got a little TJ Yeldon about himself and a lot of lateral quickness, and I think he's going to impress some people this year.
Yep. Ashanti Sistra told me, he said that guy's for real. He's already a college football player.
Yeah, the only problem he has is he's going to have to sit behind Zach Evans and Ulysses Bentley IV. That's his big problem. He's a guy that would compete for starting minutes if those guys weren't on the field, because I tell people all the time, we haven't had running backs at Ole Miss you recruit in and bring them in with the talent level of Zach Evans. He's a unicorn.
He is.
I just don't think people realize.
If he stays healthy, I'm going to say he's going to rush for 1,600 yards this year. And you will use Ulysses Bentley as a change of pace back. Judkins probably get some mop-up duty. They might even just play Judkins in 4 games to redshirt him. You never know. They've just got so many possibilities.
With the new transfer rule, redshirting is gone.
Yeah, you really probably don't want to redshirt people, I guess.
Yeah.
Because you don't want to give them any reason to leave.
The running back.
I think that's the big.
You want to play. I think you want to play 4. For the reason that you can say, hey, we're going to get you to the NFL and we're going to give you 10 carries a game. And that's all. We're not going to overuse
you. I think so. And we've got a way to prove it to them with Snoop and Jerrion, And Parrish, went off to the U, but, we've got plenty of, the recruits want to see what can you do for me. there's some team players, but there's some me players too. And to be what Lane Kiffin needs to be, he has to make a good mixture of the me and the team. Mm-hmm. He's got to get those guys that are more me than team and make them team players. He did wonders with Matt Corral. He did one. Poor Matt, got misquoted or just said the wrong thing. I don't know. I know what he was trying to say. He was trying to say when he committed to us, it was because we didn't have any quarterbacks, and he knew Shea Patterson was leaving, and he's like, hey, I can go up there and I can get some playing time right off the bat. That's what he meant. Mm-hmm. But people are going to take it and mess with it and do whatever. But he learned a really good lesson. Like you said, if he ever says it again, then you're going to start wondering. But
yeah,
he learned a really good lesson, and I thought Kiffin kind of had his back in the response as well. So that's why I love so much about Lane Kiffin. He has never. I'm going to knock on wood. He has never said the wrong thing at all. Mm. He's completely honest. He's the closest thing to a Nick Saban type guy we've ever had at Ole Miss in the modern era.
Yeah, he's Nick Saban 2.0 because the Nick Saban that did exist, the hard ass that are on these players and coaching them real hard, that guy's not going to exist anymore in this whenever everybody can transfer every year.
Oh, because they'll just say, dude, I'm out. I'll go play for somebody that's fun.
Yeah.
And that's why. And Kiffin is ahead of the curve on that. Mm-hmm. He's the players love him. He's fun. Mm-hmm. He's not a taskmaster. He's he makes sure that they get that pro mindset that he always talks about. And the pro mindset is different than the college mindset 10 years ago under Nick Saban or anybody.
Pro mindset. Lane Kiffin is from the Pete Carroll School. Everybody knows that. Ed Orgeron was from the Pete Carroll School.
Right.
Ed Orgeron had the same rules that Lane Kiffin had. The difference was Ed Orgeron, it was all about the team. That was rule number one. It was all about the team. Lane Kiffin is pro mindset. Now, it means the same thing. It basically means do what you're supposed to do. But it has a very forward-looking definition for people that look. It's like, hey, Coach O was looking internally what we're doing right now. Lane Kiffin's looking out for me for what I'm going to get to the league. He's going to get me ready for that and how we have to do it. It was a way to market it a little bit. It's incredibly smart. That and his branding of fun is probably the biggest thing about his program right now.
Oh, I completely agree. And that's why we've got this big recruiting weekend this weekend. I mean, we've got we've got some studs coming in, people, and this is what I love about this staff and love about this coach. A lot of these guys, if you follow the pay services, a lot of these guys were off the radar, and then we're getting all these guys from all over the United States, and it's just a huge recruiting weekend.
Starting to look like 2013, 2014 out there again, isn't it?
It is. It is. And he's doing well with the young guys, and he's going to go out and get some portal guys every year, and he's just going to roll with the changes. We are so fortunate to have Lane Kiffin.
Yeah, I'm expecting high school kids to be about 10 or 15 signees a year, and the rest being in the portal.
And the rest be portal. I agree. And you still have the 80, as I understand it, for the next couple of years. We've still got the 85 limit, but there's no limit on how many you can sign. So that's where this portal churning is going to happen too. So it'll be interesting to see how he handles that. But him being an ex-NFL coach and having a new roster every year, basically, he knows what he's doing.
Yeah.
He's got experience in that area where a Mike Leach doesn't. A Mike Leach has been a college guy forever. And, Mike Leach is bought in
You muted out. You okay?
Sorry about that.
There you go. What'd you say that last sentence?
Oh, I just said that Leach is bought into the old school program of building.
Okay. Tom is getting a ton of phone calls right now. So maybe it's like really I don't know, maybe some breaking news or something like that, but he's frozen up at the moment. There he is right there. He's going to come.
Okay. Okay, I'm so sorry. Just to give you a heads up, my daughter's pregnant. She was calling me to tell me the gender.
Oh, okay.
I put her on hold, and I said, I'm in the middle of my podcast. I'll call you back. So you may have to edit that out later. But
break the news. Gender?
Oh, I didn't find out. I said I got to get back to the podcast.
Okay.
I'll send you something. But yeah, no, we're just really fortunate, man, to have the direction we have in football. We really are, and I'm excited to see the quarterback competition. I think that's going to be a big deal.
Yeah, I think there's a divide in college football right now, and this is coaches, fans, the whole 9 yards. There's a group of people that see football the same way they saw it in 2008. It hasn't changed. The same standard operating procedure for all things, they think it still exists. And then you got people that realize that everything has changed, and Lane Kiffin is amongst those. And those guys have a chance to have a Boise State type impact in college football. Nobody would know what Boise State is or who Boise State is, but the fact they basically invented packaged plays and things that were so ahead of the curve around 2003. With them doing that, they were able to beat some people, and now everybody knows about Boise State. Lane Kiffin has a chance to do something similar.
You are exactly right. You are exactly right, and I may be wrong. He may split next month, but I think he's got a home in Oxford. I think he knows that there's not near as much pressure as there would be at some other schools. I think the only school right now that he would even think about leaving us for would be Alabama.
Yeah, and I don't know if he would, because when it comes to Lane Kiffin, he still spends most of his time when he doesn't have to be recruiting and being in the office down in Boca Raton. He basically gets to work remotely. Mike Leach does the same thing with Key West. And those two Mississippi schools in the SEC, there's not many other places where you can do something like that. In Alabama, they would demand that he's in that office, and he's completely grinding. Nick Saban just went through what he went through. He wanted him there from 5 in the morning till midnight. And Lane Kiffin's not that dude.
No, he's not. He wants to have a work-life balance. That's one of the new quotes nowadays: a work-life balance, and he wants that. He doesn't want to kill himself. He wants to recharge in the summer, and he can do so, and he's loved at Ole Miss. His kids are loved at Ole Miss. He's got a really good position, and I think everything that's happened to him in the past makes him realize just how special he has it at Ole Miss.
Yeah. See, I just, if as long as he can win. Now, if he gets to a point to where there's just a problem that he's not going to be able to get past, he might move to another level or decide he has an itch.
Right.
But right now, I think he's exactly what it is. Now, he's down in Boca Raton. There's I'm not making fun of anybody, but North Mississippi and Lafayette County cannot compete with Boca Raton.
No.
It can't compete with Winter Haven, where I'm at. I mean, it's a different place, so you have to understand that. He has the ability to do it. He makes, $7.5 million a year. He can hop on a private plane and be down here in no time. He can get back to Oxford in 2 hours. I mean, it's not that big of a deal, and they're kind of making it work. But you hear people that have rumblings, they're like, oh, he doesn't like to recruit. And the whole thing is he's not here. And there's other people that want that grinding thing. That you talk about work-life balance. It's like they want people that live to work and not work to live.
Exactly.
And Lane Kiffin, he doesn't live to work. He works to live. And then he goes to Boca Raton onto his boat. He catches his deep sea fishing with his kids. He's got his puppy. The whole 9 yards. It's a good situation. I just worry that some people are going to meddle, and it might become untenable for him.
Well, there's plenty of examples over the years of people meddling with coaches and ruining good deals. They meddled with Tuberville and he left, and they meddled with some more too. And
they meddled with Cutcliffe too.
Oh yeah, they did. Yeah, they did. They meddled with him, and I'm not saying that Orgeron was the right guy, but he didn't have a chance from the day he started until the day he left.
The problem he had is Pete Boone did not hire him. That was a Robert Kayat joint.
Exactly.
And immediately from the jump, there was a separation between Pete Boone and Robert Kayat. And so Pete Boone was not in and was going to work to get this firing to happen no matter what. He was going to be a difficult AD. We used to have to count tapes. Whenever we would do an order with tapes, we used to have to count to make sure that we ordered enough or ordered what he thought was appropriate. Pete Boone did. So it was difficult in the Manning Center. It was different. By the way, they did all the construction now. I just realized my video room is probably gone. The room that was originally there, we had this nice big video space, and half of it went away for the new team room, and I think the other half went away for this one.
For this expansion or for this remodel or whatever. Yeah, they have spent some really good money, I think, on the IPF, because that's where those kids are going to stay a lot.
Oh yeah.
They're going to stay a lot, and they need to be comfortable. They need to be able to do what they got to do, and
it's a fantastic building.
Yeah, and it keeps them out of trouble when they're down there too, if you know what I mean. So but speaking of trouble, I saw where Kim Deechie signed another free agent contract. So
yes, he's going to replace DJ Jones, I think.
Yeah, in San Francisco. Yeah, yeah.
Before we get out of here real quick, this show today, we talk about the possibility. I say it's time that Ole Miss plays Southern again, and I think we've built up this almost boogeyman thing when it comes to their schools, and their fans are mean, and a whole bunch of reasons. I think after the Super Regional, that kind of proved that it wasn't the case, because if anything was going to be heated and crazy, it was going to be that series. Yep. And I think we should start treating them, honestly, in football like we would Troy, like we would USA, like we would ULM. Play them in Oxford. Maybe 2-for-1, just give them some money, because Southern Miss doesn't have money. Their athletic budget is about the same place as Jackson State at this point. They're hurting off.
Exactly.
If Nebraska can go to the Rock, we can go to the Rock.
I'd take a 2-for-1. I'd take a 2-for-1, and I see no problem with playing Southern Miss. I think it would be good for the state. I think that back in the 80s when Southern Miss was more formidable, our budgets were about the same, and the talent levels were, closer. I think now with the ESPN money, our budget's insane, and with NIL, it's going to be easier for us to field a more athletic team than Southern. Of course, they'll play their best. It'll be a good rivalry, but it'll be good for the state. And I would rather play Southern than Memphis.
Yeah. My thing is, in a 10-year period, I think Ole Miss should do this. They should play 2 games against Southern Miss. They should play 2 games against Tulane, 2 games against Memphis, 2 games against UAB, and then 2 games against MTSU. And that would just kind of cover around. Everybody can travel to it. It would cover your G5 game for a decade, because the FCS game is going nowhere and the Power 5 game is going nowhere. So that G5 game, it would set up, because everybody wants to go to Tulane. Even if you go down at one of the times we go down and play Southern, if we do that, once every 15 years or whatever it is, that's still an hour drive away from New Orleans.
From New Orleans, exactly.
Yeah.
Well, and I'd go a step further for those FCS games. I would start scheduling, and I know State's done this, but I would start scheduling some of the Mississippi schools. Alcorn State, Jackson State, so on and so forth.
Yeah, I said that today too.
Yeah, we brilliant minds, man.
Yeah, it just makes sense if we can get away from this hang up that we have about fan bases and things like that. Mm-hmm. If we can get away with that and just do what's best for everybody involved, there you go. It's unbelievably easy. Yeah. Now we have Alcorn on the schedule. That'll be a big day when they come into Vaught Hemingway Stadium. But JSU should be on the schedule too. I don't think Mississippi Valley should, because I think their coefficient or whatever they look like, you can't even count them for a bowl game. Even if you can count an FCS team, their scholarship situation is such to where you can't do it.
Right. Yeah, I think we need to stick with the Alcorn States and the Jackson States, maybe even a Grambling, maybe even a Southern.
Yeah. And also add in the UT Martins, the Austin Peays, and the Sanford. Yeah. It makes sense. You can build this 200-mile wall around people, and you can just use it for scheduling. And you can get discounts for offering them to come to Oxford to play. You would pay Jackson State less than you would pay Wofford, because it's going to cost less for them to do it. They can do it up and back.
Get there, right? Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting to me. I think it's just time that we play Southern Miss, and everybody needs to stop the pretense of what's going on and just figure out a way to make it work.
I completely agree.
All right, that is the show. Thank you very much, Tom. I do want to tell you can get more of the SEC by making Locked On SEC your second listen every day. Host Chris Gordy and his local experts, that's me, of Locked On, take you across the SEC in 30 minutes or less. Make Locked On SEC your second listen every day. Locked On SEC. Tom, thank you very much. Get off of here. Go call your daughter. Figure out what that gender is, and I'll see you next week, bud.
All righty, buddy. Hotty toddy.
Hotty toddy.